Chapter 18 of A Dog Crusoe and His Master. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Allison Hester of Athens, Georgia. The Dog Crusoe and His Master by R.M. Ballantyne. Chapter 18. A surprise and a piece of good news. The fur traders. Crusoe proved, and the pagans pursued. Dick's first and most natural impulse on beholding this band was to mount his horse and fly, for his mind naturally enough recurred to the former rough treatment he had experienced at the hands of Indians. On second thoughts, however, he considered it wiser to throw himself upon the hospitality of the strangers, for, thought he, they can but kill me, and if I remain here, I am likely to die at any rate. So Dick mounted his wild horse, grasped his rifle in his right hand, and, followed by Crusoe, galloped full tilt down the valley to meet them. He had heard enough of the customs of savage tribes, and had also of late experienced enough to convince him that when a man found himself in the midst of an overwhelming force, his best policy was to assume an air of confident courage. He therefore approached them at his utmost speed. The effect upon the advancing band was electrical, and little wonder, for the young hunter's appearance was very striking. His horse, from having rested a good deal of late, was full of spirit. Its neck was arched, its nostrils expanded, and its mane and tail, never having been checked in their growth, flew wildly around him in voluminous curls. Dick's own hair, not having been clipped for many months, appeared scarcely less wild as they thundered down the rocky pass at what appeared to be a breakneck gallop. Add to this the grandeur of the scene out of which they sprang, and the gigantic dog that bounded by his side, and you will not be surprised to hear that the Indian warriors clustered together and prepared to receive this bold horseman as if he, in his own proper person, were a complete squadron of cavalry. It is probable also that they fully expected the tribe of which Dick was the chief to be at his heels. As he drew near, the excitement among the strangers seemed very great, and, from the peculiarity of the various cries that reached him, he knew there were women and children in the band, a fact which, in such a place and at such a season, was so unnatural that it surprised him very much. He noted also that, though the men in front were Indians, their dresses were those of trappers and hunters, and he almost leaped out of his saddle when he observed that pale faces were among them. But he had barely time to note these facts when he was up with the band. According to Indian custom, he did not check his speed till he was within 4 or 5 yards of the advance guard, who stood in a line before him, quite still, and with their rifles lying loosely in their left palms. Then he reined his steed almost on its haunches. One of the Indians advanced and spoke a few words in a language which was quite unintelligible to Dick, who replied in the little Pawnee he could muster that he didn't understand him.
"Why, you must be a trapper!" exclaimed a thick-set, middle-aged man riding out from the group. "Can you speak English?"
"Ay, that can I," cried Dick joyfully, riding up and shaking the stranger heartily by the hand. "And right glad am I to fall in wi' a white skin and a civil tongue on his head."
"Good sooth, sir," replied the stranger, with a quiet smile on his kind, weather-beaten face. "I can return you the compliment, for when I saw you come thundering down the corrie with that wonderful horse, and no less wonderful dog of yours, I thought you were the wild man of the mountain himself, and had an ambush ready to back you. But, young man, do you mean to say that you live here in the mountain alone after this fashion?"
"No, that I don't. I've comed here in my travels, but truly this bean't my home. But, sir, how comes it that such a band as this rides in the mountains? D'ye mean that they live here?" Dick looked round in surprise, as he spoke, upon the crowd of mounted men and women with children and pack horses that now surrounded him.
"'Tis a fair question, lad. I am a principal among the fur traders, whose chief trading post lies near the Pacific Ocean, on the west side of these mountains, and I have come with these trappers and their families, as you see, to hunt the beaver and the other animals for a season in the mountains. We've never been here before, but it's a matter of little moment, for it's not the first time I've been on what may be called a discovery trading expedition. We are somewhat entangled, however, just now, among these wild passes, and if you can guide us out of our difficulties to the east side of the mountains, I'll thank you heartily and pay you well. But first tell me who and what you are, if that's a fair question." "My name is Dick Varley, and my home's in the Mustang Valley near the Missouri River. As to what I am, I'm nothin' yet, but I hope to desarve the name o' a hunter some day. I can guide you to the east side of the mountains, for I'd come from there. But more than that I can't do, for I'm a stranger to the country here like yourself. But you're on the east side of the mountains already, if I mistake not, only these mountains are so rugged and jumbled up that it's not easy tellin' where you are. And what," continued Dick, "may be the name of the bourgeois who speaks to me?" "My name is Cameron, Walter Cameron, a well known name among the Scottish hills, although it sounds a little strange here. And now, young man, will you join my party as a guide, and afterwards remain as a trapper? It will pay you better, I think, than roving about alone." Dick shook his head and looked grave. "I'll guide you," said he, "as far as my knowledge'll help me, but after that I must return to look for two comrades whom I've lost. They've been driven into the mountains by a band of Injuns. God grant they might not have been scalped." The trader's face looked troubled, and he spoke with one of his Indians for a few minutes, in earnest, hurried tones. "What were they like, young man?" Dick described them. "The same," continued the trader. "They've been seen, lad, not more than 2 days ago, by this Indian here, and when he was out hunting alone some miles away from our camp, he came suddenly on a band of Indians, who had 2 prisoners with them, such as you describe. They were stout, said you?" "Yes, both of them," cried Dick, listening with intense eagerness. "Ay, they were tied to their horses, and from what I know of these fellows, I'm sure they're doomed. But I'll help you, my friend, as well as I can. They can't be far from this. I treated my Indian's story about them as a mere fabrication, for he's the most notorious liar in my company, but he seems to have spoken the truth for once." "Thanks, thanks, good sir," cried Dick. "Had we not best turn back and follow them at once?" "Nay, friend, not quite so fast," replied Cameron, pointing to his people. "These must be provided for first, but I shall be ready before the sun goes down. And now, as I presume you don't bivouac in the snow, will you kindly conduct us to your encampment, if it be not far hence?" Although burning with impatience to fly to the rescue of his friends, Dick felt constrained to comply with so reasonable a request, so he led the way to his camping place, where the band of fur traders immediately began to pitch their tents, cut down the wood, kindle fires, fill their kettles with water, cook their food, and, in fact, make themselves comfortable. The wild spot which, an hour before, had been so still and grand and gloomy, was now, as if by magic, transformed into a bustling village, with bright fires blazing among the rocks and bushes, and merry voices of men, women, and children ringing in the air. It seemed almost incredible, and no wonder Dick, in his bewilderment, had difficulty in believing it was not all a dream. In days long gone by the fur trade in that country was carried on in a very different way from the manner in which it is now conducted. These wild regions, indeed, are still as lonesome and untenanted, save by the wild beasts and wandering tribes of Indians, as they were then, but the Indians of the present day have become accustomed to the pale-faced trader, whose little wooden forts or trading posts are dotted here and there at wide intervals all over the land. But in the days of which we write it was not so. The fur traders at that time went forth in armed bands into the heart of the Indians' country, and he who went forth did so with his life in his hand.
as in the case